So, if a fire breaks out in your office today, statistics actually show that your brain could lose up to 30% of its cognitive function.
Which is terrifying, honestly.
Right. Like, you won't be able to process complex instructions. You won't remember the intricate layout of the hallways. And in that moment of sheer panic, the only thing keeping you alive might be a piece of corporate wallpaper you've walked past, 1,000 times without actually seeing it.
Oh, yeah. You know, the posters we're talking about, the bright colors, the warning signs, usually tucked away by the break room microwave.
Exactly. So today our mission for this deep dive is to decode one of those documents. We're putting a magnifying glass over a specific Blue Star fire protection guide.
And, most of us just dismiss these posters as bureaucratic compliance. We assume human resources just, needed to check a safety box for the insurance company.
Yeah, totally. It just blends into the background.
But when you strip away the visual noise and look really closely at the language, it reveals this deeply calculated approach to behavioral engineering. The authors of this guide understand that human beings are, frankly, terrible at preparing for abstract long-term threats.
We really are. We just don't think about it.
Right. So they have to manipulate our daily habits to keep us alive.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because the document frames its entire philosophy around two phrases, and they're placed at the absolute top and bottom of the page.
Yeah, they're impossible to miss if you actually look.
Right. So at the top, it demands, be prepared, stay protected. And anchoring the bottom is the ultimate goal, which is protect people, protect property. Everything we're going to look at today is basically a manipulation of our natural instincts to serve those two mandates.
It's essentially a timeline. We are looking at a chronological map of how to engineer survival in a shared physical space.
A timeline, right.
And before you can react to a disaster, the environment itself has to sense the threat.
Which brings us to the first pillar. The guide starts by addressing the building's sensory network, right under the heading, Fire Alarms and Detectors. The mandates are actually pretty stark.
What are the specifics there?
Well, first, it says replace batteries when alerts occur, and second, inspect alarms and detectors and report faulty units immediately.
What's fascinating here is that a modern building is essentially deaf and blind. The concrete, the steel, the drywall, they don't feel heat or smell smoke.
They're just inert materials.
Exactly. The alarm system is a synthetic central nervous system. It's engineered to feel the pain of a fire so the occupants don't have to. But technological solutions are incredibly fragile without human vigilance.
Right, and the word that really jumps out at me here is immediately. Report faulty units immediately. Not, at the end of the day, not when maintenance does their quarterly rounds. Why use such uncompromising language?
Well, it targets a very specific human psychological flaw, which is known as the normalization of deviance.
Normalization of deviance, okay.
Yeah. When a smoke detector battery starts chirping in a hallway, our brains quickly categorize that sound as a nuisance rather than an impending threat. We just, we tune it out.
Oh, for sure. You hear the chirp near the water cooler and just assume the office manager has already ordered new batteries.
Exactly. We assume someone else will deal with it. The bystander effect completely takes over. And the moment you ignore that chirp, you neutralize the building's entire nervous system.
Wow. So you're basically flying blind.
Completely. And time is the single most critical resource in a fire. A fire can double in size every 60 seconds.
Every 60 seconds? That's insane.
It is. The detection phase is the only mechanism that buys you the crucial minutes required for the rest of the survival system to activate. Without early detection, the fire just grows exponentially, while the people inside remain completely oblivious. So that word immediately is trying to break through our collective complacency.
That makes a lot of sense. So the guide assumes the hardware is already on the ceiling. It's demanding proactive human maintenance because a dead battery collapses the whole timeline before the fire even sparks.
Perfectly said, yes.
But a nervous system only alerts you to the pain, right? It can't fight off the attack. Once that alarm triggers, the building relies on the occupants to actively alter the environment. And that brings us to the fire extinguishers.
Right. We shift from sensing the threat to actually engaging it. This is localized, immediate action to suppress a small fire before it becomes a structural threat.
Okay, so looking at the text here, it mandates two specific actions. First, keep extinguishers visible and unobstructed. Second, ensure the pressure gauge is in the green zone.
Seems pretty straightforward.
It does, but honestly, when I look at this section of the poster, I feel like they missed the most obvious and important part.
Really? Like
Well, they tell me to look at the gauge, they tell me to make sure I can see the tank, but they don't tell me how to actually spray the thing. Isn't that a massive oversight? Like, if I'm staring at a fire, shouldn't the poster tell me to, I don't know, pull the pin, aim at the base of the flames, and squeeze the handle?
I get why you'd think that. It
Yeah.
feels incredibly counterintuitive, but omitting those operational instructions is a deliberate choice rooted in crisis psychology.
Right, really? Deliberate.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
If you are standing in a hallway reading a manual while a fire is spreading, you have already lost the fight.
Oh, yeah, I guess that's true.
The poster is not a training manual for the moment of crisis. It's a tool to engineer readiness long before the fire starts. It is specifically designed to combat the illusion of safety.
Because having a giant red metal cylinder hanging on the wall just naturally makes everyone feel secure.
Exactly. But a fire extinguisher is just a prop if it isn't maintained. An extinguisher blocked by, say, a heavy coat rack or hidden behind a stack of unused chairs provides false hope.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Think about it. If you run toward that extinguisher during an emergency, fight your way past the clutter, and then look down to realize the pressure needle is sitting at 0, you've burned the only escape window you had. False hope costs precious seconds.
So it's actually worse than having no extinguisher at all.
Much worse.
Because if the wall is empty, I just run to the exit. But if there's a dead extinguisher on the wall, I waste time trying to use a broken tool.
Exactly. Which is why the guide focuses entirely on the visual green zone.
Yeah.
You do not need a background in fire suppression or, mechanical engineering to understand that green means go and red means stop.
Right. Anyone walking down the hall on a Tuesday afternoon can just verify the operational readiness simply by glancing at it.
Yes. The tank contains both the fire retardant chemical and the pressurized propellant needed to shoot it across the room. If the needle drops out of the green zone, the propellant has leaked. The tool is dead.
Okay, so it prioritizes the condition of the tool over the operation of the tool, because if the condition is compromised, operation is impossible anyway. But active defense has major limitations, right? I mean, an extinguisher is only designed for a fire the size of a wastebasket.
Right. It's not for a raging inferno.
So if the fire is spreading quickly or the extinguisher is dead, we have to fall back. We need the environment itself to do the heavy lifting. And this is where the Blue Star Guide shifts gears completely, moving from active defense to passive containment.
This is where the structural architecture becomes a weapon against the fire.
Okay, so Section 3 dictates fire doors kept closed. The mandates are to keep fire doors closed at all times and keep the area around fire doors unobstructed and clear. They even include an illustration of a door with a sign plastered on it reading, "Fire door, don't obstruct."
It's very explicit.
Here's where it gets really interesting for me. A fire door operates exactly like a watertight bulkhead on a military submarine.
Ooh, I like that analogy.
Right. If a submarine takes damage and water floods a compartment, the crew seals the heavy steel bulkhead. They sacrifice that one flooded room, but they save the rest of the ship.
And the thermal dynamics of a modern fire door operate on that exact same quarantine principle. I mean, a fire requires heat, fuel, and oxygen to survive.
A basic fire triangle.
Exactly. A heavy, properly sealed fire door doesn't just physically block the flames, it starves the fire of oxygen. And furthermore, it contains these superheated toxic gases and the thick black smoke.
Which is the real killer, right?
Historically, yes, far more deadly than the actual flames. The door physically quarantines that lethal atmosphere to a single section of the building.
But then we run into a major behavioral problem because humans absolutely hate inconvenience.
Oh, we despise it.
A heavy fire door placed right in the middle of a high-traffic office hallway is annoying. It disrupts the flow of the day. You got to push it open with your shoulder while carrying your coffee. So our immediate instinct is to just grab a wooden wedge or like a heavy box of printer paper and prop the door wide open.
Right. If we connect this to the bigger picture, we basically trade the structural integrity of the building for a few seconds of daily convenience.
It's crazy when you think about it.
It is. Our brains prioritize the immediate guaranteed reward of an easier walk down the hall over the abstract, highly unlikely threat of a catastrophic fire.
So we actively dismantle our own survival systems.
We do. And propping that door open transforms a marvel of passive containment into a literal chimney.
A chimney?
Yes. When a fire burns, it consumes oxygen and creates a low-pressure void. That void acts like a vacuum, pulling fresh air from surrounding hallways. An open fire door creates a draft that will actually pull the fire and the toxic smoke right through the building at terrifying speeds.
Okay, that definitely explains the uncompromising language. at all times, not just when the building is empty, not just when it's convenient.
At all times.
And it repeats the demand we saw with the fire extinguishers, too. Unobstructed.
Wow.
Keep the extinguishers unobstructed. Keep the fire doors unobstructed. The guide is literally trying to reprogram how we interact with physical space.
Yeah, because clutter is usually treated as just an aesthetic issue.
Mhm.
The office manager wants the hallway clean so it looks professional, right?
Yeah.
But the Blue Star Guide frames clutter as a severe, life-threatening hazard. A clear physical space is a life-saving space. If a door cannot close fully because, I don't know, a decorative plant is in the way, the seal is broken, the quarantine fails, the physical boundary must be pristine, or the entire passive containment system just collapses.
Man. So looking at the flow of this deep dive, we really see the layers of defense here. We have the hardware with the alarms acting as the sensory network.
Yep.
We have the active tools with the fire extinguishers providing localized defense. And we have the structural architecture with the fire doors acting as thermal bulkheads.
It's a very solid system.
But none of those physical elements matter without the software. The software dictates how everything functions, and the software is us.
It's human behavior under extreme stress.
Exactly. That brings us to the fourth and final pillar of the document, emergency response readiness.
This is where the abstract concept of safety becomes intensely personal.
The directives laid out here are straightforward, but they're demanding. First, know your nearest exits, assembly points, and emergency contact numbers. Second, join regular fire drills to understand the emergency response process.
Important word there, understand.
Yeah. So what does this all mean for you, the listener? Put yourself in that scenario. The alarms are screaming at 120 decibels. The hallway is filling with acrid smoke. Like you said, the guide deliberately uses the word understand. It tells you to join drills to understand the process. It doesn't tell you to just memorize the map on the wall.
This raises an important question about how our brains work in a crisis. Memorization is incredibly fragile under an adrenaline dump.
I can imagine.
When your sympathetic nervous system triggers the fight-or-flight response, your peripheral vision narrows. Your auditory processing distorts. The prefrontal cortex, which is the part of your brain responsible for logical processing and spatial memory, essentially powers down to direct energy to your muscles.
So you literally can't think straight.
Exactly. If your only survival plan relies on recalling a two-dimensional map you glanced at 3 months ago, that mental image will evaporate the second you smell smoke.
Theory just gets entirely warped out by panic.
Yes. Experiential learning is the only effective countermeasure to that physiological response.
Experiential learning, like the fire drills.
Right. When you physically stand up from your desk, walk down the specific stairwell, and navigate to the outdoor assembly point during a routine drill, you're bypassing the need for complex recall. You are wiring that physical route into your nervous system.
So you're turning abstract safety instructions into deeply ingrained muscle memory.
Exactly. Your body learns the route, so your panicked brain doesn't have to figure it out on the fly.
That's brilliant. And the mention of the assembly points stands out as a critical piece of that experiential learning, too. I mean, it's not enough to just sprint out of the lobby doors and go grab a coffee down the street.
No, not at all. Fleeing the building is only half the objective. When fire crews arrive on the scene of a burning building, their very first priority is a rescue assessment. Their first question to the building manager is going to be, is everyone accounted for? If the occupants have simply scattered into the surrounding city, there is no way to perform a head count.
So the first responders have no idea if the building is actually empty.
Right. And they might risk their own lives, pushing into a collapsing superheated structure, to search for an employee who is already safely sitting on a bus heading home.
Oh man, that's a tragic thought.
So the designated assembly point is the mechanism used to verify that the mandate to protect people has been successfully achieved. Gathering at that specific physical location closes the loop on the entire response protocol. It shifts the situation from an active rescue to a contained incident.
It really changes everything about how you look at a simple poster. It's not a random checklist of chores. It maps a chronological response to disaster.
It really does.
First, you ensure the environment can detect the threat by actively maintaining the alarms. Second, you prepare to actively mitigate a small threat by monitoring the visual readiness of your extinguishers. Third, you rely on the environment to passively contain the spread by refusing to compromise the thermal bulkheads of the fire doors.
Yep.
And finally, you systematically evacuate through a physical process you have practiced until it becomes second nature.
It is an impeccably designed survival loop. But I think the most important thing to remember goes back to the dual mandate at the bottom of the page. Protect people, protect property.
Right, those two core goals.
Maintaining the hardware, changing the batteries, keeping the pressure gauge in the green zone, refusing to wedge open a heavy fire door. Those actions ultimately save the concrete, the steel, and the servers. They protect the property.
Okay, so the hardware protects the building.
Exactly. But the ultimate fail-safe for protecting the people entirely relies on your personal readiness. The hardware cannot evacuate you.
So it's up to you.
It is. I want you to consider your own environment right now. If the alarm in your building triggers today, are you genuinely prepared to be an active participant in your own survival? Or are you just blindly hoping that the building's architecture will be enough to save you?